So what's going on, guys? DIY Dan here again, and this is another episode of Summer Addiction. In this video, I'm going to be going over the new Big Air Ballast that I bought. Now I'm going to be showing you the main differences between the Big Air Ballast and some of the other ballast systems available. Then we're going to put them in my 2001 Taiga 21V, and I'm going to go over what I liked about this system, what I didn't like about this system. I'm also going to get into my opinion on what it did for the wake, for both wakeboarding and wake surfing. Now, I haven't wake surfed for very long. I started last season, but I am really enjoying it because I am getting a little on the older side and it's much easier on the body. The other benefit to wake surfing is it doesn't take as much skill to be the driver for it because you're moving at much slower speeds, and there is a lot less throttle adjustment needed because it is much more consistent. As with wakeboarding, you are constantly having to adjust the throttle to maintain speed because when the rider pulls out really hard, you have to throttle up, and then when he makes the transition back in, a lot of the times you have to ease up to maintain that consistent speed. Unless, of course, your boat is equipped with that cruise control perfect pass. I also purchased a Swell Wake Shaper 1.0, and in the next video I do, I'm going to go over how I think that worked. We're going to place it in different positions on the boat and look at the difference in the wake it produces. And I am also going to move those Big Air ballasts around and some other ballast to different locations in the boat and see which one is the best for wakeboarding and wake surfing. So let's get to it. So this is my old ballast, guys, and I've had it for over 15 years. So it's done pretty dang good for as old as it is and as much as it's gotten used. So recently on one of our trips, it got ripped and now has a big leak, which is why I upgraded to the Big Air Ballast. But I wanted to show you it to tell you a couple downfalls that I think the Big Air Ballast has improved upon. The first thing is the pump is directional. So in order to change from drain to fill, you have to change the location of the pump. When you're in drain, you have to hook it to a bottom port and pump it out of the boat. And when you're filling, you have to put the pump in the water and hook the hose to one of the other ports to fill. So depending on the location of the ballast, that can be kind of a pain. So one helpful hint, guys, if you do have a system like this and it's still working good, obviously you're going to want to keep using it. I put 3 heavy washers on the threads with a nut to tighten it down, and therefore when the pump's in the water, it's weighed down so you don't possibly get it floating to the top and getting air bubbles. I did have that happen to me quite a bit with using this ballast. So when I used to have to drain this ballast, I used to get so annoyed at trying to put the pump on the bottom port that I just scrapped that altogether. And once getting the boat up on the trailer at the end of the day, I would just loosen the cap and then let it flow out the drain in the boat itself while we were going home. So now we'll take a look at the Big Air Ballast system. You'll notice the size of the pump, and the pump always goes in the water. The hoses are always attached to the bags, and you just have a quick disconnect that connects on either the drain or the fill on the pump itself. And the pump is just always in the water. Honestly, with the other style systems, that was the most annoying part, is changing the location of the hose on the bag. So I think this is a big improvement. All you have to do is take the hose that's already attached to the bag, hook it on the pump, and open a ball valve. So the other big advantage is if you look at the size of the hose on the Big Air Ballast, I timed how much it took to fill the bag, and it was 2.5 minutes per bag to fill versus the old ballast, which took me 8 to 10 minutes to fill. Now, the only downfall to that is the bigger hoses and the bigger pump are a little bit more cumbersome and a little bit more awkward to move around, but over my day of experimenting with the different locations and filling it up several times and moving them, it wasn't that big of a deal. So if you do get these ballasts, you will have to attach the hoses to the bag. Right here, I'm just grabbing my pipe tape so I don't have any leaks. And I'm going to show you guys how I do pipe tape because it's a lot easier than I've seen a lot of people do it. So you'll notice how I have that positioned. Then I'm going to lay the tape on my thumb like so. We hold the threads of the fitting towards your body. Set that on the threads. Hold it with your other thumb. And then just start wrapping it. And I like to put a good solid 10 wraps, especially with this, because we're not going to go super tight. We're just going to do it by hand. So you can just unroll it really easy. And then when you're done, depending on how good your tape is, the tape I have at work, you can just snap it off like that. This tape I found I do need to snap it off with my finger and finish it off. One other thing about pipe tape is you need to make sure that you go clockwise around the threads. If you go counterclockwise when wrapping it, it is going to unwrap as soon as you start tightening down the fitting. So once again, if you're holding it in your left hand, you want the threads facing your chest, and then put the tape on and go in a clockwise direction. So after getting both of those hoses wrapped with tape, I put them on the bag. This was kind of annoying to get them started, but once getting them started, they threaded right in. There are several different ports on the bag, so you just want to make sure that the port you threaded in is on the bottom and is in the location you want it, because these hoses will be staying on the bags permanently. There is a quick release cap for a breather to let the air out of the top of the bag while filling, so make sure you take that into account as well. And that's all there is to it, guys, and these bags are ready to use. So I've got both ballasts in the back compartment of my boat. This is the hose off of the first ballast. We're going to hook it up to the fill. These banjo fittings are super easy to use. You just put it on and then snap the two clips over. Make sure your ball valve is open. Put it over the side of the boat and then plug it into the cigarette lighter and it will start pumping. Here is the breather. You just pop the cap off and you can push that little button and it will relieve the air pressure built up from it filling. I did that a couple times for each bag. Right here you can see my deck is starting to sink. Normally it was completely dry just sitting. Once we got both ballast filled, that deck was completely underwater. Once you get pretty full, when you hit the breather, you're going to start getting pockets of air with water, and that lets you know that you are almost completely full of water. Then all you have to do is put the cap back on and unplug the cigarette lighter. Once you unplug the power, then all you have to do is lift the pump out of the water, shut the ball valve off, and disconnect the banjo fitting. Then just tuck your hose down with your ballast bag. So right here I'm actually filling the second bag, and I made a critical error here. You know, I always tell you the dumb stuff I do. If you noticed, I left the ball valve shut off. Then I plugged in the power and it actually pushed the ball valve off of the banjo fitting. Now, whether that was supposed to be glued or not, I don't know. However, the only thing holding that pump from going to the bottom of the lake was the power cord. So I will be putting a rope tether on my pump so I can have that in the boat tied off to one of my cleats. So if that does happen again, I will not be losing my pump. And I rigged that up as soon as I got home from that trip. Here's a quick view of the second bag after I filled it and bled the air out. And then here's a quick view of both bags once they were filled in the back storage compartment of my boat. And here's a view of the platform after filling them up, and you can see it is completely underwater. So my wife is still getting used to driving this boat, so I didn't really have that great of a run with the wakeboard. However, I do feel that the wake was a little lippier and I was getting some good height. And we had just the wake shaper on the boat to try to wake surf behind it, and I could not stay up without the rope. Once I put the ballast in, it did drastically help, and now I can stay up behind the boat. It's still a pretty narrow window without getting washed out behind it. However, I can do it, and I'm gonna get a couple more ballasts, and like I said, we're gonna do that experimentation and play with it and let you guys know how it goes. As far as draining the ballast, all you have to do is take that banjo fitting and hook it to the port that says drain, stick it over the side of the boat, plug it into the auxiliary power, and it will start draining. Now, I drained these ballasts 2 or 3 times that day when I was experimenting with them, and it only happened to me once, but I did get an air pocket, and it was draining the bag rather slowly as compared to the other 2 times I drained the bags, where it pumped it out in the same amount of time as it filled it. This one took about 4 or 5 minutes to drain instead of the normal 2.5 to 3. But besides that, I didn't have any other issues with this system. I don't like the fact that that banjo fitting came off of the ball valve, and I might either glue that or throw a screw in it. I haven't decided yet. But overall, I think the quality of the bags and the pump is good. And I do like the time it saves because it was much faster than my old ballast. And to tell you the truth, I was a little worried about the fact of the hoses being on all the time. However, I love the fact of the banjo quick disconnects because that is so much easier than screwing and unscrewing a hose into the bag itself. So that's about going to wrap it up for this video, guys. Hope you guys enjoyed it and it gave you some good information. If so, hit like and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. And I will be having that other video coming out, and we're going to be playing with the placement of the wake shaper and the ballast. So stay tuned for that, and hope to see you next time. Have a good one. Later.